soulish realm a little bit. So this is going to be a little bit more practical versus spiritual. Well, when we get into the soul part, that's going to be, we'll have some of that going on as well. So let's see if we can load it up here. Yeah, just a reminder, remember our goal is to transform the way we think about health and how we can attain it, retain it, and how to, we're going to learn a little bit better how to steward our body, because this is the temple of the Holy Spirit. And if we're on a mission, if we're on a calling, we've got to be healthy. And we need resources as well. I appreciate what Abraham was talking about with that as well. And those are all some of the promises that are in the kingdom. So, missing a page there.
Reminder, everybody, silence your phones.
Did you find it?
I don't see it on here. It would be page 6 that you have there. It's on the physical pillars.
Right there.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay, got it. Okay. I think that font's messed me up. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about, in my 40 plus years of practice, I've seen all kinds of ways, methods, plans, potions, pills of how to be healthy in our body. And so I've seen it all. I go, well, not all, but I've seen a lot of it. But so what I've tried to do here is put together a list, and we're going to talk about and get into it, of what I have found in my experience to be the best way to give your body, whether you're sick, or whether you're healthy even, of how to navigate and do what we need to do to keep our bodies healthy, and if we are sick, to come out of sickness as well, in light of also what we were speaking about this morning. So let's start off with this. So the first one you see up here is good nutrition. Duh, right? I mean, we've got to have good nutrition. So what does that mean? Well, there's several parts of that. There's food. So what kind of food? We know that the food is pretty bad in our country right now. Thank God we've got some leadership now that is taking note of that and starting to make some changes with that. So in kind of a quick summary of that, of what's the best way to eat, because again, there's all kinds of diets and programs and plans and this diet, that diet, and all that. I attended, it was actually an online conference, thank God, because it lasted for about a week. This conference had 40 doctors speaking at it. Of those 40 doctors basically represented, if you named a specialty or a field, they were there. Medical doctors, every specialty. Neurology, cardiology, nephrology, all the different specialties. Chiropractors, acupuncturists, nutritionists, naturopaths. All of them were there. And the consensus, and these are top level people. These are people that are in universities. They are people that are leaders and I would say they're the leaders of people that actually really know what's going on out there in the natural nutritional world and functional medicine type world. And the consensus is the best way to eat. And a lot of them said it this way: the healthiest people on the planet are people that are eating from the realm or the world of keto to carnivore. All right? Keto to carnivore. So keto is basically carnivore, which is primarily eating meat. And that would include any kind of meat with a few vegetables. That's keto. All right? Carnivore, of course, is just meat. Now, some of the most dramatic results we've seen with people that are sick, really in the realm of autoimmune conditions and pretty severe other type conditions, the way they get the healthiest the quickest is eating meat. Why? Because that is the most anti-inflammatory way to eat. Everything has a certain level of inflammation that it creates in the body. And inflammation is what drives or starts as the catalyst, we talked about earlier, catalyst of a lot of diseases. We don't feel it right away, we don't see it right away, but it builds over time. And then we end up, like we talked about this morning, look across the landscape, and what do we see? It's not a pretty picture most of the time. So just keep that in mind. And some people do a combination of both. I've done both. I'm about 95% carnivore right now, and that's when I feel the best. I can tell you, I've eaten all different ways. I can just tell you, 10 years ago, before I started this, I played golf about once a week, usually on Thursday, because that's my day off, one of my days off. On Friday mornings, this is 10 years ago, and maybe even some before that, Friday mornings, I was having trouble getting out of bed. I was so sore, so achy. Now, that's ridiculous. Being, 60 years old and can't get out of bed? Are you kidding me? So when I started learning more about this and went to this and started eating out of that kind of carnivore, I kind of really went hardcore carnivore for a while. It was like amazing. All of that went away. Because the whole thought was, well, I'm getting sore, I guess I'm getting older. You know, you're getting 60 something now, and I guess this is the way everybody does. Well, that's the mindset, right? We talked about that this morning. Well, I'm just getting older, just getting, well, you ache and pain, well, what do you expect? You're getting older, your blood pressure's going up, well, you're getting older. We got to get out of that mindset. We're going to get more into that. So that, you can do with that what you want, but, like I say, there's all kinds of variations of that. One thing I would caution people about, and I might step on some toes here, maybe not in here, but I might step on some toes, is that people that are trying to eat vegetarian or vegan are really hurting themselves.
Yeah.
They're hurting themselves bad. Because there's certain things that you cannot get nutritionally, whether it's nutritional supplements or whatever, you cannot get it other than primarily red meat, red fatty meat. Now, I was taught in college, even in chiropractic college, and even some doctors today are still talking about the same thing. Don't eat fatty red meat. You're going to get heart disease and all that. That's not what causes heart disease. That's been totally debunked now. What's causing heart disease is carbohydrates, sugar, and that sort of thing. Why? Because it creates inflammation in the body, and sustained ongoing inflammation creates disease and ultimately autoimmune type conditions. When I was in college, when we studied autoimmune conditions, if you had an autoimmune condition, good luck with your life. Maybe you can get by with a few steroids here and there, and good luck. Well, thank God we have come way beyond that, way beyond that. So that's kind of the food thing in a nutshell. All right, then the next thing is supplements. So supplements is a pretty big deal. I've got up there, if you noticed, food-based supplements, because there's all kinds of supplements out here. You go to any nutrition store, you walk in the door, tons and tons of nutrition. Okay, that's a whole other story. Well, which one do I need? Which one do I take? And that's some of the stuff we do in our office. We do some muscle testing, and we've done some other teachings on that. And those kind of teachings are also up on these websites that we were talking about earlier as well. And that's why I say to get some of the deeper stuff, that you have to go into those areas because we don't have time to get into all that today. So what do I mean by food-based supplements? Supplements made primarily, it can't be 100% food-based all the time, but the majority of them are food-based, which means they're made from organically based products. All right, and there's only a few companies out there that, at least that I know of, that are doing that and ethically doing it. One of the companies that I use, they test the products when they get them in. They test them in the middle of the production, and they test them again at the end to make sure potency and all of that is up to speed. So that's what we do and what we use. And I say if you're taking supplements, seek out somebody that's got food-based supplements. Because if you're not, you may just be wasting your money, and you could be hurting yourself. I just read something the other day about people taking synthetically made supplements. Hurt you. It can hurt your kidneys. It can hurt your liver. So we need to be careful of that. Just because we're taking some vitamins and supplements, we may not be doing us any good. Now, one of the companies I use actually, because they were accused of, well, you say you're doing all these things, and we don't believe that. So they had a third-party independent come in and check their stuff, and that's what I said, they're testing, the companies we use, they're testing all the time to make sure potency and what's in the bottle is in the bottle. So then they turned around, one of the companies I'm talking about, they turned around and hired a third party to go out. All right, let's go out and see what's out there then. Okay, they're accusing us. Let's go see what they're doing. So they went out, started buying stuff off the shelves of different health food stores and so forth. Guess what they found? They found everything in the world. Everything from a couple of the large stores, I won't mention any names, but they're everywhere. When they tested their products, they found zero nutritional value in them. Zero. Now, how are they getting away with that? Well, it's because it's not a greatly regulated industry, and we really don't want to, because we know that anytime the government gets involved in something, it doesn't turn out very good, right? But we do expect, them being ethical. All right, so we need to go with the companies and the people that we know are ethical to the best of our ability. And the companies we've been to, I've been to all their manufacturing plants and how they do stuff. You could eat off the floor of their facilities. It's really amazing. So just keep that in mind when you're doing supplements. The next thing we have on the list up here is hydration. So hydration, of course, right? We got to drink enough, but that's not it totally. Hydration is composed of a couple of other elements too that we've got to have in the equation. One is, of course, we've got to have fluid. Got to have enough fluid in the body, good fluid, good water, preferably spring water or something, RO water that's been remineralized or something of that nature. Then we also have to have enough trace minerals in our body, and we have to have enough sea salt in our body. Why? Because these substances actually help our bodies manage the fluid and get them to where they need to go. Otherwise, you drink them and you will either pee them out or you will sweat them out. And they don't get to where they are. Okay, and I'll tell you a story, and some of you that were here probably last year heard this story, but for those that don't, it's pretty telling. So I had a girl come in and see me probably 3 or 4 years ago now. She was about 40 years old, and she was suffering, well, when she came in, her and her mother came in, and they told me, well, she's suffering from seizures. All right, so I said, all right, and they had been to probably 8 to 10 doctors, every specialty, everything being tested, and they couldn't find anything wrong with their nervous system, they couldn't find anything wrong with her brain. And they're saying, so it came to the point where they actually thought she was psychosomatic or faking. All right, so they end up in my office. I don't remember exactly how they got there. I said, all right, well, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do what we do with everybody else. We use a testing technique called contact reflex analysis, where we muscle test and we check reflexes. So I'm going through her. And I'm thinking, probably they must be missing something neurologically or something. Turns out when I get done with the exam, I find that she's dehydrated. So when I said that, she looked at me like I had 3 heads. And the reason why is she goes, there is no way I can be dehydrated. I'm drinking 200 ounces of fluid a day. I went like, oh, okay. Well, you're dehydrated. And here's why. Because you don't have enough minerals. And plus the minerals and the electrolytes that you have in your body have gotten washed out. So not only are you dehydrated, you've actually made your condition worse. Okay, because you're drinking too much. So water's not, drinking too much or more is not always better. All right, so what do? We put her on some minerals, we put her on some salt. I saw her like 2 weeks at the church we were going at the time. I saw her about 2 weeks later. I hadn't seen her yet back in the office. I said, oh, how's it going? She goes, oh, I'm fine. I'm back out in the woods. She's a hunter, and she's back out in the swamps and the woods out here hunting. And she goes, oh, I'm fine now. I'm good. We cut her fluid way back to about 50 or 60 ounces a day, and got her on some minerals and stuff. So then her electrolytes start firing again, And she actually, one of the things that was happening, and it actually happened in her office, she was not really having seizures, she was kind of browning out, okay, not blacking out, and she actually had it happened in my office when she's sitting there, her mother's there, and I'm talking to her, and all of a sudden she like, goes down like this, and I'm thinking 911, her mother goes, no, don't worry about it, she'll be back in a minute. so, sure enough, she came back, and she goes, oh, what happened? And that was what was happening. She was just, her electrolytes were so low in her body couldn't actually function. And that's a dangerous situation because that gets bad enough, your heart will stop.
Right.
In fact, they had a water drinking contest at some university out in California a few years ago.
That's actually really bad.
Guess what happened to the winner?
He died.
She died. Why? Because she washed out all of her electrolytes and the heart stopped. And she died. 20-something-year-old girl. Is that crazy or what? Yeah. So we got to make sure we're hydrating right. Okay, then I've got up here intermittent fasting. That's the main thing that I talk about in my book. So what does intermittent fasting do for us? Well, we're not after calorie restriction. Okay, we're not trying to restrict calories necessarily with intermittent fasting. What we are trying to do is control insulin levels. Okay, because when we eat, insulin goes high. All right, and then when we're not eating, insulin goes low. So what are we trying to do with insulin? Well, when insulin's high, certain things happen in the body. We begin to store things. Our body goes into a storage mode. We store fat, we store sugar, and we store inflammation. When we're fasting, what happens? We burn those off. So therefore, we can take conditions like prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, and we see those things reverse because we're burning off all this stuff that's causing that in the first place. So we're not supposed to say we don't, well, like I said this morning, we don't cure anything. We just get the body in a mode to where it can heal itself. All right, so that's what intermittent fasting. Now, when I talk about intermittent fasting, I'm not talking about days of fasting. You can do those. Those are good things to do. And some people do, 24-hour fast, 3-day fast, 7-day fast. I'm not really even talking about that. And I do this every day myself. I just don't eat breakfast. I skip a meal. So I fast about 18 hours from dinner to around to lunch the next day. And that's a pretty good start to start this burning process. If you do have some sort of disease process, we try to get them to go down to maybe eating once a day. All right, but you have to kind of work up to that. And you have to, even doing this, you start skipping a meal, your body's going to scream. Your body's going to scream at you. So, your body's going to start screaming at you, and it did me. So, for those people that can't, or people that do have sugar issues and stuff, you have to go a little slower. And what I recommend people do is just, if you're eating breakfast at, say, 7:30 in the morning, well, go to 8 o'clock before you eat. Do that for a few days, then go to 8:30, and you work your way up until finally you're into lunch. All right, so that's a good way to approach that. Okay, so that's intermittent fasting. And like I say, I would get if you don't have my book, get it. It's a great guide on top of just learning about intermittent fasting, but also just on a guide that also talks a lot about this food stuff in the back as well. All right, so the next thing on the list is gut health and digestion. We have learned through the years, if your gut's not working right, and I'll detail that more in a minute, but if your gut's not working right, you're spinning your wheels, okay? So what happens in the gut? Well, the big thing we find in a lot of people is their guts are leaking. Does everybody know what leaky gut means? Yeah. So leaky gut's where you're leaking undigested food through the wall of the intestinal tract, which gets into the bloodstream, undigested, and then becomes inflammatory. So now you got it in, you think you're eating good food, your gut's leaking, and it's creating inflammation, and you're spinning your wheels, and you wonder why you're not making any progress with your health. So why do people have leaky gut? Well, what happens is the lining of the gut gets stripped off, and it's a single cell layer. It's not a big thick layer, it's just a single cell layer of cells that gives us that protection. Well, that gets stripped off when we're eating sugar. Gluten is another one. There's basically 5 things that really strip out your gut. Sugar, gluten. In the dairy family, it's milk and ice cream. Okay, and then foods that contain lectins. Lectins are in a lot of foods, a lot of vegetables even. And they're a heavy protein that scrape up the gut. Okay, I've heard some doctors talk about when you're eating lectins, it's like eating ground glass. It just strips out, cuts up your gut. Now you're leaking. So that has to be identified, like I told you this morning, we identify, and then when we identify, then we know what to do with it. All right, so gut health is good, and then of course, once we get the food down there, we got to get it digested correctly. All right, and when, you know, a lot of people have indigestion, and we hear that all the time. Well, indigestion, you go to a doctor, what do they put you on? You know, they put you on, PPIs, which is, you know, they stop the acid,
Right.
which in a lot of digestive problems is because we don't have enough acid. The food goes in the stomach, sits there, rots, and then gives off an organic acid, and that's the burning we get. So sometimes with people with burning stomachs, we actually give them more acid. They go like, what? You know, it doesn't make sense. But we do an acid test, we test it, and if it works, then great, and then they can start digesting. So those things have to be happening because you're not getting, even if you're taking supplements, you're eating good food, and you're not digesting, getting into your bloodstream, into the liver, and get processed in through the body, then you're going to be, again, here we are spinning our wheels again. All right, so the next thing is detoxing the body. If we're toxic, and everybody has a certain level of toxicity, so we got to detox the body. Now, there's a lot of detox programs out there, and a lot of people are doing detoxes, but there's one thing that gets them in trouble with this a lot when we're detoxing, and that's that second one, is we have to open up the eliminatory pathways in the body, which is what? That's your liver, your kidneys, your bladder, gallbladder, bile duct. All of these things have to be functional and working. If not, as you detox, you can't get them eliminated, so you recycle them back into the system. Around and around we go. You feel terrible. You're doing all this stuff, and you're wondering why you're not gaining any ground on it. So that's one of the things we have to really look for, is to open up the eliminatory pathways. Now, I've got the word iodine up here. So over the last year or so, I've been kind of, you would call it, reintroduced to iodine. Iodine is an excellent way to detoxify the body in higher doses. And iodine has been controversial through the years because they intended it to be controversial. All right, a lot of this iodine research was done back in the 30s, I would say pre-pharmaceutical age, okay, 30s, 20s, late 1800s, where that was the primary remedy that they used on a lot of conditions. It's antibiotic, it's antifungal, it's antiviral, or it has those components. But we've now learned that it's also a great detoxifier in heavy enough doses. And I would caution that, don't run out and just get some iodine and start doing it. You really need to be under the care, not necessarily me, but somebody that really understands. And there's other doctors around, some get it, some don't get it. But you want to be with somebody that can kind of walk you through how to do this. Because you can get, if you get ahead of the detox process, or if you don't have the eliminatory pathways opened up and you start dumping stuff out of the body and can't get it out, you're going to create a firestorm. And I might add to that, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, but in the chiropractic world, I also do an upper cervical, especially called upper cervical, where we open up the upper cervical so the brain can detox through the cerebral spinal fluid flow, or cerebral spinal fluid itself, because that's got to flow correctly. That's how we get toxins out of the brain. So if we get iodine in there and we're trying to dump stuff out of the brain, and you're kinked off up here, again, you're going to create a firestorm. So we've got to have these pathways and things open. And this is some newer things we've learned over the last couple of years anyway. So this is an excellent way to, and it's kind of easier than all these detox programs and things that are out there. If you do it at the right speed, you don't even feel it. If you do it too fast, you'll start detoxing too fast. So that's something we try to navigate through so you don't feel that. So detox is very important. So then we got exercise and movement. I think that speaks for itself. That should be age appropriate, of course. And then we got to have proper energy flow in the body. In other words, we got to have everything communicating correctly in the body. We don't think about this too much, But you know, the brain communicates with the body. We learn that different organs communicate with each other, different glands, organs, not only through the nervous system, but through the meridian system of the body. And now we've learned that the body actually communicates through the fluids of the body, through the photons in the body. So all of that has to be, and that's another reason why you have to be hydrated correctly, because that's where a lot of this communication is going on. And when it's not getting done, then again, you're spinning your wheels and you're wondering why something's not happening. So that is where chiropractic comes in. We're actually enhancing the proper energy flow. The same thing with the upper cervical chiropractic, and we've seen some great results with that, because sometimes we're reattaching the brain to the body so we can get communication from here to here and start waking some things up and getting the organs and glands working again better. Because again, if you're taking all the nutrition, eating the right stuff and doing all that, but you're not getting the flow going, you know, it's like the electrical flow to these lights. You could have everything, you know, all the circuitry and everything just perfect, but if the breaker's off, nothing's happening. We don't need to blame the lights. We don't need to blame the wires. It's the circuit. It's the circuit, right, or the breaker. Okay. So the next one is decrease inflammation. Remember, these are the pillars, or the things that we're working on to get our bodies at the highest level of function that we can get them at. So decreasing inflammation, we already talked about that a little bit. And the main things that affect inflammation is, of course, the foods we eat, toxins we're exposed to, stress can trigger a lot of these things, because stress triggers all kinds of biochemical reactions that are not good in the body. Allergies, a lot of times allergies are caused because certain systems are not functioning right in the body to deal with these allergens as they come in. Thank God I have no allergies. And why? And then somebody else comes in and, you know, they walk outside and they have problems, you know. So what's that all about? Why am I spared of that and they're not? Well, something's not functioning right that's dealing with this onslaught of these things that are coming at them. And then, of course, infections can trigger inflammation as well. Known and unknown, a lot of people are carrying low-grade infections in their body, not something that makes them sick, you know, where they're in bed, but they've got these low-grade viral infections or even bacterial infections. Sometimes it's in the teeth, at different places. It's kind of hiding out, and it's creating these impediments, and they're kind of acting like saboteurs. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do all the time in people is we're working on decreasing inflammation. That's why I was talking about the food is a big thing. It's almost always starts with the food that they're eating. Okay, and then the last one on this list is learn how to age well. All right, we talked about that earlier a little bit this morning, about aging well and, you know, getting old and all those kind of things. Because a lot of it is lifestyle, you know, learning things that cooperate with the health of our body instead of fighting it. Belief systems and mindset, because it's not just so many people. I mean, we all have done it. We know people that do it. You know, we do something for 30 days, and then we kind of either burn out or we feel like we've done something good, and we kind of go back to what we were doing before. All right, and then we do that again, and we're back and forth. The same thing with weight, right? We lose 30 pounds, we gain 40 back. We gain, lose. I talked to somebody not too long ago who said, "Yeah, I've lost 500 pounds." I go, "Really? You weigh that much?" "No, I'm talking about over my lifetime." Up and down. Yeah, I gain 30, lose 30, up and down, you know. So that's kind of weird, but anyway. So it's a lifestyle, and I know you can't see it on here, but and because all of that leads to transformation, where we become a person of health. Instead of I'm always trying to do something to get healthy, okay? And we've talked about the spiritual aspects of that already, and we're getting ready to talk about the emotion part, or the soulish part that we're getting ready to go into. So this is what I have found in my practice, on my practice career, of what works best to get us in a position where our bodies are operating at a high level, all right? And there's a lot of doctors, these doctors I was talking about earlier, and I kind of think the same way. If you do this, and we get the spiritual stuff going in the right direction, the body will heal itself of anything. We know that.
Yes.
We know that. Because we say like, oh, that's incurable, or this and that. Nothing's impossible to God.
That's right.
But sometimes we got to remove these impediments. We got to quit shooting ourselves in the foot. And so this is a good guide to that. Okay. So let's move over into, let's talk about the soul a little bit. Okay, I forgot to bring my phone up, but you know this thing for sure better than I. Okay, so the scripture we're talking about here is 3 John 2. Beloved, I pray above all things that you be in health, even as your what? Soul prospers. So we're going to talk about soul prosperity a little bit. Okay, soul prosperity. So in the soul we have what? We have the mind, we have the will, and we have the emotions, right? So let's start with the emotions. Does anybody believe that emotions can affect your health? That's a dumb question, isn't it? Okay. Well, it does, okay? And we're all probably dealing with something emotionally, or if we're not, we have. All right? Emotions are God-given, right? There's good emotions, bad emotions. Jesus had emotions. God has emotions, right? Some are good, some are bad. Just about all of us, through somewhere in our life, whether it's religious experiences or other kind of worse situations probably, have been subjected to all kinds of issues, experiences that have set them up for all kinds of emotional responses. Okay, what are some of the common ones? Stress. How about stress? How about fears, traumas, illnesses? It goes on and on and on, right? Some of them are known consciously. Oh yeah, I know that thing, man. That thing stressed me out, and I'm dealing with it, right? Okay? And some are stored subconsciously. Okay, we have some stress that's in our body that we don't know it's there per se, but it's affecting us. And it's sabotaging us. And we can't figure out, what is this thing? Where is it coming from? What's going on? So I'm going to talk about, I know that the Holy Spirit can reveal anything and everything to us, okay? And we know that. All right? And some of us are there, some of us are not there. And then even then we may need some help. So I want to talk to you about the subconscious emotions a little bit. All the emotions we've learned are held in the form of either energy or biochemical substances, right? They're either held in patterns, is what I wrote. It holds in the form of energy and biochemical patterns. Now, we're made, we all have emotions, right? So let's take grief, for example. So grief, someone dies or someone near or something passes away, let's say, or we lose an animal or something like that. And we're grieved, right? It's a natural response. We missed a person, this, now. All right. And so, but yet there's a process that, and I think it's God set it up, and I think that we're set up to where there's a process that our body goes through mentally and even physically to process through that. There's books written on grief, right? In 2 weeks you should be here, and in 4 weeks you should be here, and 8 weeks you should be here in that grieving process, right? So, and by and large, we deal with those emotions that way. But sometimes they get trapped. We may not know exactly why, but they get trapped in the body, in the subconscious, and we don't know a lot of times that they're there, and we don't know what they're doing to us. And we just know something is off. We can't get there. We're doing all the stuff with the nutrition and even praying and different things, but there's still something that's being missed. And these are definitely impediments to health. All right? And like I say, sometimes we don't even know. So there's a lot of different techniques out there that deal with that. You may know a lot of them. We use in our office, we use a technique called the emotion code. And some of you may have heard of that. The emotion code basically we're looking for, we're looking to identify whether you have something like that going on, and if you do, if we find it, then we know what to do with it. You can do, the person can know how to pray now about that. We also can release it. There's an energetic technique that we actually release it, because remember, they're held as energy. And we can get rid of that. There's ways of doing that. And I might add that we always do this work in the name of Jesus. Because we have had pushback that, well, that's New Age, or that's witchcraft, or it's this or that, or whatever. And I can just tell you it's not, because God created it all. Now, we get that connotation because there's a lot of New Agers and stuff that do this kind of stuff. But it doesn't mean it doesn't work, just because, New Agers drive cars and New Agers use air conditioning. And, it doesn't mean we throw that out. What we need to do is find out, and I've done a lot of praying and deep diving into this to make sure that I am accurate in what we're doing, why we're doing this, how, not that I'm getting us led astray. Because the Holy Spirit will show you, when you get into some weird thing. So it's not. God made it all. And I'll just tell you this, and I told the people that were here last year, I told them this, that when we were starting to look at doing this and implementing this in our practice, I don't know, that's been, 4 or 5 years ago now, I think. And I was praying about this because I was getting pushback. And I'm going like, all right, Lord, what is this? Do I need to be doing this, or what's going on? And we're actually driving out, I was actually driving out the gate of our subdivision. And the Lord told me this when I was praying about it. He said, Grady, that is my stuff, and we're taking it back.
Amen.
All right?
That's right.
So, because that stuff, the Lord's going to get into the earth what He wants to get into the earth.
That's right.
And unfortunately, we were having this conversation about Ayurvedics last night, right? About because the Indians is where that came from, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but, because that was there for the Christians to take and utilize, right? And the Christians go, no, we don't want to, that's weird, or that's witchcraft, or that's that. Okay, so they bring it into whoever will, the same thing with chakras, the chakra energy. Okay, go, oh, chakras, oh my God, yeah. Well, it was discovered by the Hindus because the Christians weren't open to it. Okay, and they've proven it's an energy field in the body. All right, so we don't have to be afraid of that word. I know other people use different words. It's actually a spinning type energy that's in the body. So, but we've seen that God's going to get is going to get His stuff that He wants into the earth in there. Christians first, I believe. Hey guys, here's something for you. Here's a revelation. Let's get on this. Okay? No, we better run from that. No, that's this or that or the other. Okay, all right, fine, I'll use this. I'll use a jackass even, right? So that's what I saw in all of that. So that's what we use. Now the emotion code is not a psychological technique, okay? Because psychology is not in my scope of practice. All right, there's a little crossover in the practice, but it's not my main focus. It's more physiological. It's a physiological issue. All right, so that keeps it, if we see something psychiatrically wrong, or we see something, psychological, I refer them to someone that needs that kind of counseling. Okay? So that's kind of the emotional part. We know that, we got a lot of sick emotional stuff going on in our society. I talked to somebody the other day that's just sick to death because he's all into this political stuff and reading everything that's going on. And he goes, what can I do with that? I said, well, shut it off.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be your first thought. That'd be your first thing to do, right? Oh, it drives up my cortisol, and I went to the doctor, and I had all these high cortisol levels, and I said, well, quit. Stop, pray, go that direction with it. Okay. So let's next talk about the mind, all right? The mind part. So we have, and Abraham mentioned this morning, that we have the mind of Christ, or so we're told, right? We're supposed to have the mind of Christ. Well, What does that mean? And I might add that if we have the mind of Christ, we have the thoughts of God, right? That's a pretty big deal. 1 Corinthians 2:16 says that we have the mind of Christ. I don't know, do I have the mind of Christ? I had a patient come in a couple weeks ago and goes, I think I'm getting dementia. I said, oh, okay. Well, that's not a great confession. She's a believer. I said, well, that might not be a good confession to start off with, but I said, well, do you know you have the mind of Christ? She goes, well, I don't know about some of that stuff. That's my husband. He handles all that spiritual stuff. I don't know. So I got to minister to her a little bit on the mind of Christ, you know. So what does that mean? The mind? I have the mind of Christ. I don't know. I don't feel like I have the mind of Christ. I'm trying to get it. I'm praying for it. Sometime it'll be here. Well, as we've been talking this morning about the kingdom, the mind of Christ is in the kingdom, and the kingdom is in what? Us.
Amen. That's right.
So again, what I say this morning, we need a revival of awareness of knowing what we have, and begin to talk like that we have the mind of Christ. Well, I don't feel like it. Well, it doesn't matter what you feel like.
That's right.
You have it. So we need to start thinking about that. And you know what will happen? You'll start getting the mind of Christ. And you'll be getting the thoughts of Christ. You'll be thinking, oh, wow, I didn't see it. Oh, I see that. I see that. You'll see things differently.
That's right.
It's right there in the kingdom. And remember, we're entangled with it.
Yes, that's
We're
it.
entangled with it. We can't get away from it. There's nowhere we can go to get away from God, right?
That's right.
It's right there in the kingdom realm, and we're entangled with it. So we have many, many people out here that are dealing with depression, anxiety, dementia, other brain issues, many even requiring medication at times. So let me tell you a story about a study on the medication part, but also what they did with some mentally ill patients. So in France, there was now this study, let me back up and set this up a little bit. So this study was done by a group of doctors. Two of them were Harvard-trained psychiatrists, if that means anything. All right, but it just means that they're not some fringe, weird type of deal, right? And so this team of doctors went over to France to a mental institution that had about 28 severely mentally ill patients. All right, we're talking about the category of bipolar, schizophrenic, and suicidally depressed. All of these patients were drugged out of their minds so they wouldn't hurt themselves or hurt anybody else. They're just vegetables. They're just sitting there existing until they die, right? So we just talked about food a minute ago, right? So they went in there. And they started feeding them a diet that had only 5 grams of carbs a day. 5 grams of carbs is like, you can inhale that.
Right.
I mean, that's like nothing. That's like nothing, right? So, what happened? Crazy. So, it was scheduled to be a 6-month program, and they did this for 6 months. But actually, within a few weeks, they were getting results. Well, what happened was this. 43% of those people, remember, they're vegetables. 43% of those people walked out of there, no drugs, and deemed normal to be released back into society.
Wow.
All right? The other 57% were discharged as normal with minor levels of medication. That is crazy because that doesn't happen.
Right.
That should be on the page of front page of every newspaper in the world.
Yeah.
Was it?
No. Of course not.
Why not? Good question, right? No money? Pharmaceuticals. Yep. So this is a new paradigm that has opened up in the psychiatric world. So now we have 2 forms of psychiatry going on. We have the drug type care of psychiatry, and then we have the metabolic. They're looking at mental illness is just another metabolic disease, just like diabetes or a lot of these other conditions. All right, heart disease, arthritis, it's just another one of these highly inflamed brain situations. That's what's happening with these people. Their brains are highly inflamed. They de-inflamed them, and the thing starts working again. Their brains start working again. Big, big deal. So if that's working for those kind of people, what about the other people that are just out here that's got, we would call it minor depression or ADHD or any other kind of depression or, any of these other things that people are dealing with, especially kids. We have kids coming in with ADHD, and the first thing I ask the new patient is, well, what are they eating? Oh, we're eating good. Yeah, right. What? Are you eating sugar? Oh, yeah, we got to have some sugar. What about gluten? Oh, yeah. I said, okay, well, first of all, you're not going to get anywhere if you're inflaming your brain with that kind of stuff.
Right.
Okay? So yeah, there's great help in that, and we help people with that, just helping get off of that kind of stuff. So inflammation seems to be the main driver of mental issues. All right. So let's go to, all right, so how do we detox the brain? Let's talk about that for a few minutes here. So one of the best things to do is, earlier what we talked about is dosing up on iodine. Now we found that iodine is real good at driving mercury out of the brain and other heavy metals out of the brain. Mercury is a very tough metal to get out of the body. And I know that from a fact because for 7 years I worked in a facility that we did IV chelation to get rid of heavy metals and clean out arteries in the body. We don't have to do that anymore because we can do it orally now, but we used to do the IVs. I did all their nutritional consulting and physical exams for them. But now we know dosing up on iodine will dry out these metals. And the iodine we use is a iodine called Iosol Formula 2. The reason why we use that, most of the iodines that are out there is what we call Lugol's. You probably have heard that. That's potassium iodide. This has potassium iodide and the pure iodine in it. So it's much more effective. It's safer because it doesn't have potassium in it. If you dose up high on potassium, that can get you in some trouble. So that's what we use there. And again, you need someone to help you walk through that. And then we ought to make sure that upper cervical spine is open so that we can drive that stuff out without it being impeded up here in the neck, right? We got to make sure the eliminatory organs and pathways are open, which we talked about earlier. We want to eliminate some of the cause of them in the first place. Etiology is what we call that medically. Eliminate inflammatory foods and toxins. Start eating somewhere in the keto to carnivore world, which we talked about. Low carb is the common denominator there. Intermittent fasting as well. Take appropriate food-based supplements, which we talked about that. Getting in the sun, grounding. Grounding is real good because that really helps your electrical system of your body. Putting your feet on the ground. And exercise the body and the brain both. We need to use our brains. Reading and doing things that stretch our brain makes us think a little bit, working with numbers. I play golf. I think golf is a great game in the sense that you can play it at any age, doesn't matter how good you are. But what it requires is you're outside, you're breathing good air, you're using your balance to stay balanced so you don't fall down. You have to think a little bit because you got to do yardages and do some math. Okay, so that keeps that going and strategy and that, and then you got to actually do some sort of physical movement. So it's and I'm not saying everybody should try to, because golf is a pretty frustrating game, I tell you. But if you get by that, I have my golf partner sitting back there in the corner, Dick, and
Can you do it barefoot?
So I have seen people doing that. I wouldn't recommend it because you know what they do at the golf course is they're spraying them all the time with pesticides. So you probably don't want to be on the ground with your feet in a golf course. You don't eat fish out of the lakes in a golf course.
I can tell you if there's a thunderstorm, then you have the right frequencies. I can tell you if you have free-range chickens, you don't really want to go barefoot either.
Yeah, there's probably places you don't want to do the barefoot thing. Yeah, especially if you have chickens in that. So So these are some of the ways that we manage, and I don't even want to use that word manage, to remove impediments to our physical body and our soulish body. And the soul kind of overlaps in, with the spiritual stuff that I was talking about earlier, and even what Abraham was mentioning of how to get all of that healthy. But even when we're doing that, sometimes we need some additional help, especially with as toxic and as sick as some of us are. So there's ways of getting that. And the good news is more and more doctors are going towards this direction. So many doctors are so frustrated, and medical doctors in that, to the point where a lot of them just quit. They're tired of the insurance stuff. They're tired of all the corporate medical world and all of that. They're not really doctors. They're just being told, do this protocol, do this protocol. They have quotas and all of this stuff. And it's like, what did I go to school for all this? When you can almost have a technician do it at this point. If they're going to, you're going to call that, or maybe it's going to be robots eventually. I don't know. But, I've got maybe a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, I know we're going to have a question and answer thing later, but I don't know, I feel like there might be somebody.
Are the healthy carbs okay to be eating them?
If you're trying to get help, if you've got a problem, that you're trying to get over, I would say most of your carbs, if not all of them, are bad. The quickest way to get to healing is get away from the carbs. Now, I said I'm about 95%. We were out to dinner last night. I had a salad, and I ate a couple bites of rice. Okay, but the rest of it was meat. All right, but I'm not fighting anything right now. But if you're sick, and the quickest way back to health, if you can do it, and we have to watch that a little bit and help people, guide people through that, is really carnivore. We've seen probably some of our biggest turnarounds in health with people that just go strictly, finally, to carnivore. They try everything, do this, and well, let's try this for a month. Let's see what happens. And you'd be really surprised. Good question. Yes.
Yes, you were talking about the hydration, how it's important to have the salt and minerals.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you suggest an alkaline? Because I know the alkaline water.
No, I'm not too much into the alkaline acid, kind of thing. Because here's why. And speaking of salt, I failed to mention that with salt, we want to use real sea salt, like Celtic sea salt or the Himalayan salt. Okay, not your regular table salt. Okay, don't use that. Okay, but because here's the thing with alkalinity and all that. Our bodies have buffering systems, and as soon as you drink something and it's out of balance with what your pH should be, unless you're sick or something's really metabolically going wrong with your system, your body's going to go back to where it is. You're trying to drive it alkaline, and it wants to be neutral or slightly alkaline or slightly acidic. That's why I don't really get into that. Now, I know some people have success with it, but I don't live there.
So you just do the minerals on the side, not like get from an alkaline water. You just get.
Yeah. I myself. Well, we just got an RO system in our house, and we're remineralizing with sea salt. There's a formula. They just put a little bit of sea salt to get the minerals, because that RO it takes everything out, and then we mineralize it that way. So I do that. Before that, we were drinking spring water. We were just having spring water delivered to the house, so we were drinking spring water because that's got some minerals in. It's fairly clean, not probably clean, but fairly clean. Yeah. Wait, she was next up here. Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to go as carnivore, what if your system is not the type of system that you handle?
Yeah, and that's the thing that comes up a lot. People go like, "Oh, I can't do that." Here's what happens. Now, I'm O-type, so I got a little bit of advantage based on what they tell us. I'm O-type. A-types might be a little bit difficult, starting going that way. But I know A-types that do it. Okay, and here's what happens. When you start going to carnivore, our gut microbiome, because this is where we have our problems, our gut microbiome begins to adjust to what it is you eat. Okay, now when I was in school, they didn't teach it that way. It's just you have what you have, and that's it. Well, we find out if you're eating sugar all the time, for example, you're going to grow bacteria in your gut that likes that sugar and eats that sugar, right? If you're eating carnivore, your body's going to convert eventually, some rather quickly, some it takes time, and you can kind of ease your way into it. But it'll change. the first time I went pure carnivore, for 3 days, I'm going like, I don't think I can do this, because my God, I felt like I was eating a bowling ball every time I ate, right? It was like, boom, you know? I'm going like, I don't know if I can do this or not. Well, what happened after with me, it only took about 3 days, it all stopped. All of a sudden, I think that microbiome changed, and now I have no problem with it. You know, I can do, so that now, I think an A-type might take longer. All right, so, and I would encourage, but I know people that can do it. Don't let that be an excuse, you know. I'm sorry? You're AB? Yeah. Yeah, so you might take a little bit longer, it might take you a little bit longer. Yeah, to do that.
Hey, Doc, what was the?
Oh, hold on, oh,
What's
What's
that?
that question over here?
The question is, if your system can't take carnivore, what do you do?
Okay,
And he's explaining how your body will switch over.
okay, because some of the live streamers were not hearing.
Okay,
Oh,
gotcha,
I thought
sorry,
it might be-
sorry, yeah.
Who else?
Okay, and the first question was on
Alkaline water.
alkaline water. Okay, that was that one, and then Julie was asking about, I forgot. What?
Good carbs, good.
Oh, good carbs, yeah, right. Okay.
So I heard a question the other day, someone was asking about keto if you have high cholesterol. So is that more a matter of like good fats versus bad fats, or does it have no reflection at all?
No, here's the thing on cholesterol. Actually, when you go carnivore, a lot of times you see your cholesterol go up. All right, and people go freak out. Oh my God, my cholesterol's up. Well, remember that conference I told you I attended? All of these doctors, there was several cardiologists, and actually Rochelle and I were at a functional medicine conference last summer, I think it was, and we had 2 cardiologists speak to us there. One was teaches at Vanderbilt, and the other one was a top cardiologist in Arizona. Both of them said this to us: we don't even look at cholesterol anymore because it's not a predictor of cardiovascular disease. All right. So, on all the tests, now doctors are still giving out statins, right?
Yes.
I wonder why. That's that question. So, we don't pay, I'm not saying 100%, we just disregard it, but most of the time we disregard it because what we're looking at now, and this is what these cardiologists tell, what they do look at is the ratio between the triglycerides and the HDL, which is the so-called good cholesterol. You divide the HDL into the triglyceride number, which triglycerides come from what? Carbohydrates. So that kind of tells you what, I can look at your blood work and tell you what you're doing with your carbohydrates. All right, so you divide that in there. As long as that ratio is below 2, you're pretty much assured that you're out of cardiovascular risk. If you're over 2, then you get into trouble. Could get into trouble, put it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
What's the definition of healthy carbs?
Two questions. One is, what would you define as healthy carb? The other one is, at the office, we had someone bring up that in the supplements they're taking, there seems to be a carbohydrate component to them. So how do you handle that if you're trying to be carnivore?
Yeah. With the supplement thing, I wouldn't worry about it too much, all right, from that, because there's not, I mean, there's probably just at most a few grams, I think, with that, because some of them, I think they put a little bit of honey in some of them. I think biotics doesn't have any in it, all right. It's standard process and has a little bit of stuff in there. The healthy carbs would be, and even this is to some people somewhat controversial because vegetables have some issues too. You know, most of your vegetables produce natural pesticides, okay, because they don't want to be eaten. So they produce so that can create some issues. But I guess the safest ones would be certain vegetables. By the way, fruit is not good, okay, because fruit has too much fructose in it. And all the fruits have been genetically modified to be sweeter than, you know, people go, well, Jesus ate this and this. Well, that stuff back then is not what we have today. All right. And did you know that fructose, which is the sugar that's in fruit, is processed through the liver just like alcohol is, without the buzz. It goes the same pathway, creates all the same problems. You've heard of fatty liver, right? Well, we always were taught fatty liver comes from drinking alcohol. So when someone would come in with a fatty liver now, And they go, I don't drink. And I'm like, yeah, right. We thought they were lying. Well, it turns out they weren't. They were eating a bunch of fruit, and they were causing fatty livers. So fructose causes fatty livers. And another thing I was taught in school was if you have fatty liver, you're on your way out. That's phase 1 of 4 phases of liver failure. All right, well, we know now we can reverse that. How? Just get the carbs out, and your body will burn that fat off. Fatty livers don't come from fat. Sounds kind of weird, right? But the carbohydrates get converted into fat and start sticking on the liver. Okay. So, anybody else?
What is grounding? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, grounding is
Explain the
where
grounding
you
issue.
just put your feet on the ground, okay? And, most back in the day, no one wore shoes, right? Basically, and there's the earth has energy, we have energy, and there's a good interchange there. And it's a healthy interchange. We actually have a grounding pad on our bed. You can get grounding sheets, and we actually sleep on it. It's actually plugged into the ground of the house, so that we can, balances energy, gives you, it does a lot of things. Most of us never touch the ground. We're in shoes all the time.
It's the electromagnetic field.
Yeah, it helps the electromagnetic field.
There's all this stuff that removes it.
Right.
Computers and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, there's jewelry also.
Yeah.
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 Bracelet.
Doc, just one question. We are wanting to go back to the blueprint that God established, right? At the beginning when He created us, and He instructed Adam to eat from every tree except from the one. I don't know what is sounding weird. And you're saying that the carnivore is really how we should be eating. Is it because nowadays, like you were saying, all these veggies are modified and it's not the best?
Yeah.
Whereas at the beginning, He kind of instructed to eat
Right.
only from the trees.
There's a lot of different answers to that, but I think the way I would look at it, to be honest with you, I probably should do even more research on this than what I've done. But that was before the fall, so everything was much different. And you're right, things that we have today are not, the foods we have today are not the foods of the Bible. Okay, even the wheat and all that stuff has all been, GMO'd. I know in Europe and stuff it's not quite as bad as it is here, but all that's been corrupted, and a lot of ancestrally, and I don't know if that was where it fits. I probably should look this up, but in the biblical timeline, ancestrally, before we knew how to grow crops, what did they do? We were hunter and gatherers. We hunted and ate the meat, and they fasted. They actually fasted because they had to, because they didn't always have a meal. If they didn't kill something that day, they didn't eat.
There's no refrigeration.
Yeah, there's no refrigeration. They didn't know about salt or any of that stuff, so they had to eat. So there's all that history in there too. And back then, you know what? They can find the skeletons of these people that lived way back. And none of them had teeth problems. They don't find any cavities in their teeth. All their teeth are straight. They're not, all these jaw problems that we have and orthodontic problems that we have today. All of them were perfect. Their teeth and everything was perfect back then. They didn't have. It's when we started eating this other
They
stuff.
didn't use fluoride, that's what.
Yeah, but so a lot of those, these teeth, even through all these, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of years in the ground, wherever they're buried, these teeth don't rot. And we have people with teeth problems, jaw problems. I got, my teeth are crowded. A lot of that's because we weren't chewing at an early age. We weren't chewing the way we were chewing. We were given, soft stuff. And so there's a whole other realm of dentistry that's all into that. That's pretty cool to look into. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Goolsby. I have a question about 12 ounces of water, the perfect drink to make. How much salt would you add? What other electrolytes, ingredients would you put in that 12 ounces of spring water?
In 12 ounces of water, you said? We find when we test people, most people in a day's time, and then you can do the math and split it up, need somewhere between a quarter and a half a teaspoon of salt per day. Okay, I have a bottle up here. I probably have about a half a teaspoon of Celtic salt I put in there and I drink. Because I have problems staying hydrated myself. I don't know if it's because I'm thinner or what, but I've always, my whole lifetime, it seems like I can never get, and it's always a challenge to get balanced out. So 12 ounce, and I recommend most people need about 50 ounces of fluid a day, 50 to 60 if they're not active, okay? Now if you're out mowing the grass in the yard, or you're working out, or playing some sort of sport, then we say use that as a baseline and drink to thirst after that. But then put some salt in there. There's probably no perfect formula, but that's what we find when we actually test people, somewhere between a quarter and a half a teaspoon of salt a day.
You learned how to test, right, Angela? You learned how to muscle test yourself?
I'm not real good with that.
Practice.
Keep practicing, keep practicing.
Because you can learn to muscle test and you'll know exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Or however they do it like this, I do it like that.
Yeah.
There's information on your table about ISOL and upper cervical,
Yeah.
but people are wondering, do they just go buy some iodine and start taking it, or what should be the protocol?
Well, we're recommending the ISOL because of the formulation now. It's a much better formulation. It's a top-notch formulation versus the age-old product, like I said, was Lugol's, okay, which is potassium iodine. And being that we're using higher doses, we want to be careful of the potassium. Most people can tolerate it okay. I know a lot of people still use that even at higher doses, but you can get in, a little bit of issue with the. But I wouldn't recommend people just go out and start doing it. You really need to work with someone that can. They can take some. It wouldn't hurt them to take some, but if you're going to go high dose, you really need to work with a practitioner who really understands this. And there's also a book out there that you can go buy. It's called Iodine, Why We Need It, Why We Can't Live Without It, by a Dr. David Brownstein. He's a medical doctor up in Michigan, is where he's at. And he's one of the ones that has kind of rediscovered and has dug out all this old research that was done back in the 30s and even before that, and has written an excellent book on that, and he's treated 10,000 people with this. And by the way, when they tested these 10,000 people through the years, 97% of them were deficient in iodine because it's not in the food, it's not in the ground anymore, particularly up north. It's really bad up north. Here we get some from the ocean.
Can you repeat the name of the book, please?
Yeah, it's called Iodine, Why We Need It, Why We Can't Live Without It. I'm pretty sure it is. By Dr. David Brownstein.
One thing about the iodine, on your class, you talked about how it gets rid of free radicals, like the radiation. And like if you're out in the sun a lot, the sun we know now is putting out a lot of radiation. It didn't used to because we had an intact atmosphere.
Right.
But the isosol will help you detox from the radiation.
I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to mention. Everyone should go to my website.
Yes.
And go to, on the top of the landing page, there's a resource button up there. And you can hit that resource button, and it'll take you to a page. And there's a couple of videos of one of my mentors. It's actually on the upper cervical, which I would encourage you to read that too. And then below that, we have an article written by one of my mentors on the iodine and all the benefits. I actually teach a class on that, and we also are going to have, well, we already have that up on AHA, that teaching on that, and because it is vast what iodine does to it. We think about, well, it's good for your thyroid, it's good for that. But like you said, it detoxes that. It also activates the P53 gene, which the P53 gene, when it's active in our bodies, that's put there by God to prevent cancer. Okay, so it creates what we call apoptosis, and it gets rid of anything that breaks out in the body. It will knock that out. So that's not conjecture. That actually happens. So there's a lot of things. It helps. You name the organ, gland in the body, iodine helps that. It helps the cells. It helps the integrity of the cells in the body. One of the reports that we're getting back from a lot of patients this winter already in our office, since we've been doing this high-dose iodine for probably about a year or so now, is that people that every year at this time, you know, they say, oh, every year at this time, I get sick. I get the flu, or I get this, or I work in this place, you know, I had a woman that works at Costco in Orlando the other day. And every year, the whole store, the whole employee staff gets sick with the flu, all right? And this year, everybody got sick except her and one other person. And she goes, I know it's that iodine. I know it's that. So,
There was even a pathway that looks like there's a possibility that it will reverse aging. We talked about that at the meeting, at your class.
well, definitely,
With the mitochondria,
yeah, it definitely slows down the
process of aging.
because it has that antioxidant effect.
Yeah.
Free radicals, which we get from toxins and bad food and stuff like that, age us.
Right.
They wear and tear on the cells, and we age quicker and faster before our time. Yeah, so it does help that too.
Yeah.
That's what you'll learn in that paper. I would encourage everybody to read that, 'cause it'll blow your mind. It'll blow your mind.
And I just wanna make sure
This
you
is
said that Iosol Formula 2 was a good product?
Yeah.
ISO Formula 2.
All right, I'm getting it, thank you.
Yeah, I saw Formula 2. Yep.
Yeah, when you look it up, it really pushes on thyroid. Can you explain a little bit, because I don't have a thyroid, so how does that function? I mean, it's for detox, but can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit?
Yeah, you can still do that. You can still use it, even though you don't have a thyroid. Yeah, you just have to make sure your medication is, you know, is good.